TV, they'd say order in the court. I'm just gonna call the board meeting, the work session to order for Tuesday.
Microphone on.
Oh, I can't stand that.
You're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
Y'all mute me every time. You really enjoy it, don't you? When I call on you, you never hear. This is the work session for Tuesday, August the 13th, and we're calling the meeting to order. I'm going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill,
Present.
Alderman Blanton, absent. Alderman Caesar,
Here.
Alderman Peterson,
Here.
Alderman Berger,
Present.
Alderman Brown, Alderman Potts, he's going to be late, I understand, and Alderman Baggett.
Present.
Okay, we've got, and the mayor's here also. So we'll start out with some public comments for items that are not on the agenda. I think the first one is an item not on the agenda. Linnea Benny wants to speak for 2 minutes about something, so I think we know this lady.
This lady.
You're not announcing you're coming back to work, I understand. Okay,
We're hiring.
yeah, please.
Did you remember the button you had to?
I had to remember the button. Linnea Benny, 2023 retiree alumni. I just want to say thank you to this board and the finance committee and all those that worked with the pension, because my retirement check has really seen a good bottom line. It's gone up. We appreciate that the insurance was reduced and the cost of living really helps. The increase really helps. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Linnea.
Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Say hello to your husband, Todd, he's there. And then we've got Patrick.
Yeah. Pick
We've
up
got
an
Patrick
application.
Berger that wants to speak on the short-term vacation rentals. You got 2 minutes, Mr. Berger.
Thank you so much. Yeah, regarding the short-term vacation rental, Patrick Berger. Yeah. Complexities. I have operated an Airbnb since October of 2019, so before the most recent changes occurred, was recently notified that I was not in compliance. Very shortly thereafter, came into compliance in regard to the permit and everything else that was required, the insurance and all. But what I'm trying to say is I think that for those of us who had been operating since before the law changed and were not able to be communicated with through the structure that the city had at the time before this software came online, I'd like to think that we could get grandfathered in and operate the way that we used to. When I originally started operating this business, I called Airbnb and they notified me that all taxes and everything would be paid through the app as, you know, we service the customers. And so I had no idea that I had to do anything, you know, with the city because I knew that they were being paid the taxes through the app. So of course I was shocked when I got the letter and that I was not in compliance and that, you know, I was going to suffer significantly with what is my primary retirement income generating asset. So it's really difficult for us. And I would like to think that since we've been operating with no issues with our neighbors and in compliance in every way except having not gotten permits, you know, originally, that there would be some accommodation there as far as making it likely that we could get grandfathered in and continue to operate the way that we always have. I think it's fair. I think it's reasonable that when you consider the lack of communication that occurred previous to the change, that, and I'm not blaming anyone for that except to say that, you know, previous to this software, which seems to link the city together with all the operators, there was an incomplete degree of communication there that would have put us in a position to come into compliance when it all changed. So
What is the address of the?
112 Elmwood Court. I did come into compliance immediately as soon as I got the notice, and am happy to be operating right now, but the remaining stricture or whatever is that we can only operate 113 nights per year. And that makes it super difficult for the investment to pay off in a way that supplements our retirement income the way we intended for it to do when we began to operate.
Yes, sir.
So,
Well, staff is listening, and thank
yeah,
you for
I
bringing
would
this
love it if y'all would recommend to the city employees that some sort of accommodation would be greatly appreciated for those of us who are in the situation that I described.
Thank you, Mr. Root.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Berger? Yeah.
question, Mr. Mayor, I have a
Yeah,
question.
sure.
Would, thank you very much, Mr. Berger. Berger. Would this be something that might need to be brought back to the board to vote? That we could
Let us look
consider?
through it, but I believe we're implementing the law as it's written at this stage. So we may need some guidance or relief
Yeah.
from the board to do something different.
Yeah.
Because I believe we're implementing what's on the books as it stands today, but
Yeah.
let us look further to see if we have other latitude or if we need the board to give further direction so that we can act if you'd like us to.
Yeah, I also am a little concerned. He did not say, are you on pause now or are you operating now?
Well,
Huh.
I am operating because I came into compliance.
Okay, so I
It's
just
the
want to make sure.
restrictions, right? There's a restriction of the number of nights that you can
Okay.
do it in the current law that didn't exist
That he's doing
before.
right now. Okay, so
So-
one of my concerns was that we quickly look at this, because if this is just gentlemen's retirement and they're counting on this income to operate their lives and everything. So I would like for us to make sure that if it does need to bring, if we cannot make a decision and let him come back in and operate as he was in grandfather in, that it would come to the board quickly, because I appreciate the fact that you have that as an income for you. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I would ask of staff, in addition to Mr. Berger sharing this, how many operators in the area, if you can give us some reports, and that perhaps was provided prior to my time.
I don't know if we know that, because these are folks that we didn't have communication with or knowledge of
Sure.
prior to the change. And we went through quite a bit to try to balance and get to where we are with how we manage short-term vacation rentals overall.
Sure.
So let us get some background related to this specifically, but also, I think what you also want to know is, are there any unintended consequences with, one adjustment might create other issues, and how we do it. So let us give you the full picture and let you know where we can go from
Plus, I
there.
also think we have to keep in mind that he was already an operator. He's not new at this, and this has been operating for a number of years, so just, yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to whole bunch of items here. We're going to talk,
One more speaker. I apologize, Mayor.
Oh,
'Cause
go ahead.
I did ask Mr. Berger to come and speak, and I would just echo what everyone said. I don't want to take up any more time, but I thought there was another speaker. But I don't think there's a lot of people that fall into this category, and I'm happy with the law as it is written now for all that came after it. I don't know that I want to change for new ones, because it's operating very well. We've gotten very little complaints, but there seems to be this segment of population that I'd like for us to look at. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we're going to look at the event permit for Centennial High School Homecoming Parade, Franklin High School Homecoming Parade, Porch Fest sponsored by West Haven, Turkey Trot sponsored by Grace Works, and
So all four of those are pretty regular events held around the same time every year, and that our special events team works with. So there's really nothing new with these four great community events.
And then is a liquor license for St. Goose. It's a change of ownership to managing shareholder Heidi Highland. Any questions about that one? City of Franklin contract 2024-0208 with Travelers Insurance to renew the city's fiduciary liability policy effective July 1st, 2024.
And there's no change in that insurance fee. It just gets updated annually, and this gives us authority to execute the extension.
And then Resolution 2024-72, authorizing the use of competitive seal proposal procurement method for choosing the service provider for closed employee pension plan and other post-employment benefits actuarial contracting services for a term of award, Office Procurement Solicitations 2025005. We're looking to renew the contract or find another actuary.
So we've had the existing relationship for 5 years, and we try to go out on a regular basis. We have been very pleased with the current provider, but we do have a practice of going out on a regular basis to make sure we're getting the right services and the right value for the services.
Then item 8 is Resolution 2024-76. This is on the voting session. Resolution to lease and occupy a portion of the First Bank building located at 722 Columbia Avenue for the interim city hall and authorizing the city administrator to enter into a lease agreement.
All right, I've got Shauna with me as well. This is for the leasing of the property along Columbia Avenue, the First Bank property. It's really 3 different buildings, the northern end of the, or southern end, I'm sorry, of the building along Columbia Avenue that you see with the First Bank identification on it. So that southern portion there, the office, 3 stories of office that wrap the parking garage just behind that building. And then about a block away is a large white house-type building that has offices in it as well. We would use those and secure those as our interim city hall location. We've projected out that cost, negotiated a full lease agreement there. We estimate that the time that we will need it will be from January 1 of 25 through June of 27. And that would equate to a cost of $3.25 million for the time period. That is an anticipated project cost that is well within the range that we had projected out when we looked at this as a project cost. So it fits our budget structure. The one piece I want to add that maybe we didn't fully appreciate when we talked about this, there are budgetary or operating costs that we will now avoid during this lease period because we have utilities and janitorial and repair services that happen in this building quite frequently that now are encompassed in this new lease. That's about $1 million of utilities and janitorial and those types. And then specific repairs in this building alone over the last 2 to 3 years has been well over $500,000. So there are additional savings that we didn't really factor in as project savings that will translate into budgetary savings through the second half of the fiscal year this year and the next 2 years that follow. So we feel this nicely fits our needs. We've looked at space planning and feel comfortable that we can accommodate our uses. We like still being close to part of downtown, and right across the street from the police building is not a bad thing either in terms of using that space, also using some space at Franklin Transit, which is also a building we own. There's some meeting space there that could be handy as well. So we think it's a really good fit. We are also still exploring the potential use of the Franklin Special School District admin building on 96 West. That's a much smaller space, but it might serve as a nice outlet for a portion of our operations that could make it even more of a fit in First Bank. That's still being hammered out. That'll be a much smaller dollar amount because it's a much smaller space. But that's probably the final piece that we will hopefully finalize and bring to you shortly. So glad to answer any questions. We have our folks that we've worked with at First Bank are with us, Julian Bibb and Sue Barbarite, who have been great to work with. If there are any questions for them, we can also have them
Alderman
join us.
Peterson.
I just,
And then Alderman Barnhill.
okay. First of all, how much parking is there compared to what we have here?
Total spaces, do we have a number? 175, and we'll share that parking together. So
That's shared?
there's 175 spaces. We're also looking at some other alternatives in terms of spaces that might be available nearby. There are a couple surface lots, one adjoining nearby church. There's some other areas that we are looking at adding parking to our mix. We may have a little bit of parking at the police building, and we'll keep looking at some other options to add to that. So First Bank's got to meet their needs as a operating bank and the office needs that are there. But then our folks there, and there's, does that 175 include spaces at the White House as well?
No, it does not.
Okay.
That's just the surface and the parking garage.
Okay.
So there's
that's
a
the garage.
good-sized surface lot there, and that will be a customer service hub. We'll have our billing and licensing team there, and that entrance right off of the surface lot that surrounds that White House building, and there's at least
Okay.
20 spaces there. I'd cautiously say at least that much there. That will be a great place for us to serve and have customers go in, short-term park, do a transaction, and be on their way. So that's kind of how we've targeted a use at that building in particular. The other two locations are going to be much more of an office use.
And also, what about the fire? What about our fire department?
Fire administration?
Yeah, mhm.
Well, they are a possible use at the Franklin Special School District site.
Oh, okay, maybe.
So that's where the administration and inspector group from the fire department may end up. Again, we're still working out the specifics on that as well, but that's the area we've targeted. That's a nice fit for the number of personnel and the size of that building.
Because I wondered, I don't even have any idea, what's the number of city people who actually work here at this building now?
Physically, it's around 200, 220,
Well,
something like
so-
that. So, yeah.
So that's not going to work until you do something else.
That helps us get there, but we'll be able to accommodate all our people between those two locations.
Okay.
And there's some areas that we're able to make more use of in terms of how we may split some offices and have a couple people in them where First Bank uses one today. There's some areas where we will be able to do that. And again, we have a good home for everybody in the way this appears to be laying out.
Well, I was just thinking because there are still going to be customers, if you want to call them that.
Yeah.
But some of our residents coming in to do some things, and as you say, some of them may just be there for a moment, to do something. But I mean, I'm just like think, what happens whenever all of us are, there too?
Yes.
That's another.
Well, and as for public meetings, we'll be looking at how we accommodate those, not in the footprint of these offices. We'll be looking at partnering with, like Williamson County at their facilities is one of the options we're exploring. There may be some other meeting space that we'll still be working through those details. But
Right. I was
you're
gonna
not going to be hosting a board meeting in these offices. You'll
right.
be doing that in
No
other.
question about
more,
that.
Yeah, more suited for
But
that use.
I remember that we had discussed maybe being able to use the Williamson County meeting room.
We've got to hammer out those details, but
Yeah, because-
seems to lay out well, especially for board meetings, work
Mm-hmm.
sessions, and voting meetings for you all, because our schedule syncs up pretty well with the
Okay.
use of that building, at least our preliminary discussion. And we'll look at some other options as well and
Mm-hmm.
sort that out here shortly.
And there would be plenty of parking there for citizens who want
Yeah,
it.
these are all, for the public meetings, we're all looking at areas that are used to accommodating a good number of the public
Mm-hmm.
already, whether it's those board meeting rooms or a theater or something like that are in the schools. Those are all options that we're exploring that will create good amount of space for a large public meeting.
Well, now that I think about it, we also occasionally used to have a public meeting at the police headquarters, too.
Yeah,
I mean, not for,
that's really where we'll house city court. But
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure for a board meeting if that will work perfect. We'll see, just because of the some of the needs with audio and audio visual, but
Okay.
we're sizing all those up as options.
thank you.
Alderman Barnhill.
Well, I think you've answered most of the questions. I'm still curious. You said 175 parking spaces divided between the bank and here. So it's not 175 that the city would be able to use then, right? It is 175. It is not.
You're right.
Okay.
So what are we thinking?
City of Franklin, I believe, is looking into adjacent lots that they can utilize.
Yeah.
So how many is the bank using right now?
I don't have that count offhand, so.
I just-
Right,
Be curious to find that out.
absolutely, yes.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to-
The transit stops right next door,
Yeah,
so
that's
can
true.
always work on a creative transit solution. The question I had was related to, do we think, what the scale kind of that additional space at the special school district? Would it be, you said it wasn't much more, this is in the top of our, of our budget for the rent.
It's
or was it
actually on
not?
the lower end.
Was it on the lower end?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not the lowest, but it's on the
Perfect.
in the lower half.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good option.
Yeah.
And I think there's plenty of parking in that area. And the police station, I'm sure there's some things that the deck's right across the street. So even if you could get 20 spots over there
Yeah.
freed up.
We may have to piecemeal some
yeah,
things.
you can
There's a
piecemeal
couple
it together.
surface lot opportunities, and like you said, there's police, and we'll get a decent share, I think, of the 175 as well. So that's all. I think there's a good solution in sight. We've got to hammer out all the details, but this goes a long way.
And the only thing, I'll speak for the West Main Ward 4 residents that as long as they're not, we don't get out and then the Natchez Street neighbors.
Yeah.
We just want to make that, make sure it's not on the on-street
We're not gonna
parking.
be
is a
parking
prime, it's not
anybody's-
primary. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's a good spot for a few, but I think the West Main and the Natchez Street neighbors would probably, appreciate us asking about this. But I do think that, I trust that if y'all figure out the parking, you'll make it work.
Yeah.
Alderman Caesar.
Patrick, you took one of my comments. It was about the on-street parking, so thank you for raising that.
Yeah.
The parking we're talking about is not public parking, meaning people aren't parking in these spaces potentially to come in and use the bank for service, right?
Correct.
This is restricted parking. So that's less of a concern. I'm confident we'll figure it out, and if we have to be creative, I think that'll flex our muscles a little bit. The other question I have is in the lease, it talks about a 3% space increase per year. Over 3 years, that's 9%. Is there an additional 9% of capacity right now that we're not accessing?
So it won't be 9%
Six.
because you've got,
Yeah.
right, only two bumps will happen during the 2.5 years. So
Is there, I guess my question is, are we planning to take more from you, or is that just a rather
No,
standard
that's just
element of
a-
leagues?
rent increase.
That's the
Oh, that's
financial.
the-
Yeah, exactly.
I misread that. I thought you were talking about square footage on the ground, not price.
No, price.
There we go.
And that's factored in that estimated 3.25 million that's in that financial impact.
Got it. Section 2. I'll have to read that one again. Thank you, guys.
Your unofficial law degree will be.
Any other questions?
When we were talking about Franklin Special School District, are we talking about the one on Eddy, or are we talking
No, we're talking about, well,
the
once
old
they
one?
move into Eddy,
Once they move
they'll
into Eddy.
vacate the location on 96
On
West,
96
and that's what
West.
we're talking about.
I
And
wondered
we've looked
about
at that a couple times. It's nice space, and like I said, it's a pretty good fit for the head count that we have in fire administration and the inspector side there
Oh, okay.
for that site.
So in other words, their offices and their parking.
Yeah,
there.
yes, that's a good fit.
Okay, thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
9 is change order 1 to City of Franklin contract 2024-0195 with Garney Construction for the emergency repair on Lewisburg Pike.
I was going to grab a puck.
We may be able to cover it. This is the emergency repair that we did along Lewisburg, and this really is this is a change order, but it really closes out the contract as a whole. So it is below the amount that we originally authorized for the work, the emergency repair. We replaced the transmission line there, and this just accounts for the full amount of quantities and materials, et cetera, involved.
Yeah, this is an overall reduction in the, if you remember, the board approved a contract price, and then we needed to get it going, we needed to get materials procured, and then we kind of lowered that price through our department taking over some of the work. This change order is for a new manhole that we found was severely corroded. There was a check dam. So this really is all just field conditions that we couldn't have imagined until we opened up the trench and saw the extent of the damage. So this is the final change order. It's for a cost decrease of $135,000, and then it's on both the work session and voting meeting tonight, so I can go ahead and get Garney paid
And this should close out the
and
project.
get it closed, get the project closed out.
Well, I shouldn't limit you, but could, like, in a way that an insurance person might understand what happened, could you explain like what happened, and is there, just for our knowledge, is there other parts of our system Or do you want to table that and send it to me in an email, or do you want to?
We had a pipe failure. This is what, about a 15-year-old pipe, something like that?
Yeah.
15
Yes.
plus year pipe. So it had a failure. The top part of it collapsed in, and so we have replaced it with a pipe comprised of different materials. It's a
So it was a fiberglass pipe. We replaced it with a ductile iron pipe,
Yeah.
which is a metal pipe, right?
So yeah, that failure, we replaced that stretch of pipe, and then we also examined other transmission lines on either side of it to see if there are similar concerns or failure points, and we did not detect anything else. So we replaced that. We have done, we had a similar issue, probably 4 or 5 years ago, along the Harpeth River with a stretch of pipe, and did a similar replacement. We did some inspection then. We were continuing to do additional inspection now to just identify if there's any other areas of concern.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Susan.
I think maybe what Patrick perhaps was asking is this a bigger concern or a risk for us, this particular type of pipe? Is it laid all over the city and we could potentially anticipate failures like this? Or 15 years doesn't seem like that long?
No,
for a pipe to be in
it
the
should
ground.
last longer.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the review that we did then and are continuing to do now, is to identify any other areas of concern. We're continuing to examine the conditions in this situation to understand why it failed when it did. I can't tell you definitively either way if this is the extent of issues or if there could be others, but we're doing our best to assess any other situations that could be similar. We would be working on those if we had them right now. We haven't identified other areas of concern, but we are continuing to look at it.
We are.
I sense that there's more there's more inquiry going on, and I appreciate what you've given us, and I'm sure you'll bring back any more concerns that might arise upon further investigation.
Are there any warranties on these pipes?
We are past that, but we continue to look at both the engineering and the materials side of this.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay, item number 10 is Resolution 2024-64, rejecting all bids for the Hamlet Drive sanitary sewer installation project. Any question about that one? Okay, we'll go to item 11, which is...
Let me frame it real quick
let's
for
go
you.
back. I was
By
gonna say-
rejecting these bids, we allow our
Well, that's right.
water
We
management
can do
team
some
to
things.
self-perform the
Yes,
work.
I'd forgotten that.
We can perform this at around $30,000 to $35,000, I think is the
right.
rough estimate. That is at least $100,000 less than the
so I
closest
said
bid that
that,
was
yeah.
received. So by going out to bid, though, we validate that the self-performed work is the best value.
Yeah.
This will be a good deal for these residents. I think it's 6 residents that will be able to tie into the sanitary sewer system, and we will do a very small special assessment to cover those costs.
Item 12 is,
11.
oh, I'm sorry, 11. I was going to read 11, but called it 12. Consideration Resolution 2024-75 to reconcile and close out a 2006 Rural Plains Sanitary Sewer Infrastructure Agreement between the City of Franklin and Berry Farms Rural Plains Partnership.
So, Vernon, please join us. Vernon's worked on this. Our finance folks have looked at this as well. As the title tells you, this is an older agreement that was done in the mid-2000s to cover some work and grant credits to the Berry Farms development for single-family unit equivalents for certain value. We're at a point where we would recommend paying out at that historical rate and closing this out. Because as we know, single-family units are worth a significantly higher dollar amount now than they were then, and that number is likely to continue to rise over time. So this has been agreed to with them. That it does allow, they assigned a number of these over time. This is what the balance that's remaining, and feel that financially this is good for us to know that and close it out than to have it lingering on as a potential larger financial obligation in the future. So Vernon's worked closely with the developer on this and our team from the financial side, and also looking at the utilities' capability to absorb this cost, feel that this is the right thing to do to manage that obligation long-term. So, Vernon, anything
No,
to add?
you've explained it well. The value of those single-family equivalents are valued at a little bit more now, but this is about a legacy agreement. And this is for the rural plains tract. And the amount of credits equate to $148,000 valued at $2,000 apiece. That was in the agreement. We also have a similar agreement across the interstate in the Reams-Fleming tract that we'll bring back to you after the first of the year. The value's a little bit more to see if there's consideration to reconcile that to the developer wants to, get out of these agreements, and administratively, we'd like to as well, because they have gone on a lot longer than it was anticipated. We've had the infrastructure has been installed, improved, tested, it's functioning, and if you go back 18 years when it was installed, that infrastructure is worth a lot more today than it was then.
So these folks installed infrastructure on our behalf to
With
advance
us, yeah.
the project, and they were granted credits back, and this just closes that out for us.
Go ahead,
And
Alderman.
It's going to cost more whenever they have to get some new permits.
Yeah.
Yes, it will. It will.
Yes.
They'll have less credits.
Yes.
Yeah, won't have it. Thank you.
Number 12 is the C-PACER program, and I think Christine's going to
Yeah,
come up.
Christine and Shauna, I think, are going to join us up here.
And then I do have one speaker, and I'm going to ask Miss Robin if she'll come up after. You can go ahead and come up if you would, Miss Robin, and we'll let you speak after staff gives their presentation, so.
So we want to walk through this. We'd had a request from a couple board members to look at this related to a commercial project that is looking at the use of this state program. It's a relatively new program and has some potential to be used to encourage energy efficiency built into commercial projects. So Christine's going to walk you through it. We've had some dialogue with a couple folks about this, and we have a specific user, I think, is one of your potential user, which is one of your related to one of your speakers. So Christine, take it away.
Good evening. We're here tonight to do an introduction to what is referred to as the C-PACER program. That stands for the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy and Resilience Program. That's why you see it referred to by the acronym of C-PACER. A little bit of background, as Eric was saying, this is a relatively new program in the state of Tennessee. It was approved in the legislative session in 2021. There have been other states in the country that have had this program longer, but it is relatively new in Tennessee. It is only for commercial property owners. We want to make sure that that is relayed. It's to access long-term financing. It's for qualifying energy efficiency, renewable energy, water conservation. It's a pretty long, pretty broad list of uses. They fit in about 4 categories of eligible projects. And then just at its highest level, the property owners do repay the loan through what the law calls describes as a voluntary special assessment. It is a request of the property owner. However, once that assessment is put into place, I do want to point out once that assessment is put into place, it's no longer voluntary. But we are going to refer to it as voluntary special assessment because that is what it is legally referred to in the law. It is placed on properties through recording of a senior lien. It is billed and collected as part of the annual property tax billing process by which the government that authorizes the special assessment to be put in place. We first looked at what are the local government's responsibilities in this program, and at what seemed to be the significant responsibilities. First of all, the local governing body does have to pass an ordinance to adopt the program. There are authorizing resolutions for specific projects along with approvals of assessment agreements that are related to specific projects. The local government staff does review projects. There's a document submission for eligibility determination since this is all related to energy efficiency and those types of projects. There is the billing and collection of the voluntary special assessment. Typically, that is through the property tax billing process. There's There can be other ways, but that's typically what happens. There is the remittance of that voluntary special assessment back to the lender. The local government is just remitting that back to the lender that the particular property is using. The local government is responsible for enforcement of that voluntary special assessment lien if a payment is delinquent, which is similar to if a property tax that is levied is not paid. However, the local government is not responsible for the delinquent or the defaulted voluntary special assessment other than enforcement of the lien. The potential benefits to a commercial building owner, it does assist in securing long-term financing. It's up to 30 years, and those are the 4 categories of projects. It is transferable upon the sale of the property. That lien is attached to the property and transferred to the new owner, so the new owner will continue paying that special assessment until the lender is paid in full. It may be used for projects that are rehabilitation projects, new construction, as well as projects that may have already been completed. So that gives some flexibility to that commercial property owner when they are looking at what type of, as long as the project fits into the type of work, it can be for new and rehab as well as projects that are finished. We wanted to provide some examples of approved projects throughout the state. There's not a lot of approved projects. I don't know exactly how many there are. I didn't find. I would, if I had to guess, I doubt there's more than 15 or 20 across the state. There's certainly more being approved as time goes by. The first one was the city of White House, north of Nashville, and they are a relatively small city. There's, I think, around 15,000 people in White House. But their project, and this was something that in their resolution for the project was interesting, they were interested in supporting the public purpose of affordable senior living. And so it was a project to rehab a senior apartment complex. And so that was something that they did note the public purpose of it, as well as that was eligible for the program. The rest of the projects that we have seen that we're able to find information on are in the larger governments. Shelby County has one from 2023, and it's a loan for, it's a new construction, but it's on a lot that's adjacent to the former brewery. There's a Greyhound bus station there in Memphis that's adjacent to. I know they're trying to do a lot of rehab work in downtown Memphis. And that project was approved last year. And there's been a couple projects in major cities in Tennessee that are very newly approved. Chattanooga had their first project, which is, I couldn't even find the exact dollar amount of the loan, but it has been approved for, it's a retrofit of a historic office building. I believe it was built in 1911. It's one of those really cool old buildings in downtown Chattanooga, and they're going to transform that into condos. Metro Nashville has a project approved this year, the larger dollar amount of around $10 million, and it's actually a new construction for Class A office space. So that gives you kind of a flavor of projects that have been approved and just what can be used for. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about our research for the city of Franklin and how the program could be administered. Something that we do have to take into account is that while the city of Franklin does levy property taxes, of course, you do as our governing body levy property taxes, by agreement with the Williamson County government, the Williamson County Trustee's Office actually bills and collects the city property taxes. And so we do not have a mechanism here at the city in which we bill, collect, and also the county's delinquent tax attorneys are the ones who enforce that property tax that you levy should they not be repaid. So that's something that is a little different. In fact, in Williamson County, I believe all of the cities except for one do use the Williamson County trustee to bill and collect property taxes. It's been a very effective program that we have used for over 10 years. So we start looking at what these other cities do that are currently in the program and what would be some alternatives for program administration, since Williamson County does not currently have a CPACER program. And so we wanted to look and see what options there could be for program administration. We did find online that the larger governments seem to have, because they do have staff for economic development, as well as they throughout their trustee's office, their treasurer's office have programs in place because they do bill and collect property taxes. Metro Nashville's trustee has a website which you can look at, has documents for the program, as well as in Shelby County and the city of Memphis have gone together through their economic development program called EDGE, which is a staffed economic development group there in Shelby County and Memphis, and they are administering a program, as well as City of Chattanooga's treasurer and the Knox County trustee. Knox County, I don't know if they have a project yet. I couldn't find one, but they do have a program in place that will be administered by the trustee's office there. Something that we did as staff look into, we did find one organization that is operating as a third-party administrator for cities such as ours that do not bill and collect property taxes ourselves, and it's an organization called Tennessee PACE. There may be other organizations. We, in the last week or so, became familiar with a law firm out of Memphis that appears to do something similar as well. So there may be other organizations. So we're not favoring one third party over another third party, but to give you an example of a third party administrator and what their capabilities could be, is we did look at this Tennessee PACE program, which does handle all of the program eligibility. They do have forms. They can be assigned to be the program administrator for a local government. They do work. They've been doing work for a number of years in Ohio and Kentucky. They do have a presence in Nashville, and they have given presentations to some other local governments in Tennessee. We do know that they've presented to Johnson City, to Lebanon. There's that organization does not have approved projects yet, but there is interest by other cities in having a third-party administrator. And an example of this one third-party administrator, they do not handle the enforcement of the lien in the case of a delinquency. That would go back to your city, in our case, our city attorney, our local government attorney, to enforce that. But that is something that perhaps another third-party administrator may have a capacity, if they're a Tennessee law firm, perhaps, to be able to do some of that. We would have to see. But we did spend time researching third-party administration, primarily because we do not bill and collect property taxes ourselves here at the city of Franklin. And so this may be a point, if Mr. Mayor would be agreeable. There is a commercial property owner in the city of Franklin that has expressed interest in this program, and I believe Ms. Robin is here representing that commercial property owner, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
If she
Love to
speaks.
hear from her.
Okay. Hi, my name's Nicole Robin. I live in Nashville. I'm actually a PACE lender. I work for a PACE lending company out of Texas, but I live here in Nashville. I have provided a couple of those loans that she mentioned on the screen. I have a handful or more in my pipeline throughout Tennessee. So we actually provide the C-PACER loan. It's private funds. We're the lender. We close on the debt, and then we go and file that assessment, and then we get repaid our principal and interest every year until the owner of the building pays us off. So I do have a client here in Franklin, and they said I can mention who they are. It's the Franklin, the factory in Franklin. They're very interested in these loan funds. They would like to take out a loan with us to do some energy efficiency improvements on their building. It's part of all the work that they're doing now, and they're hoping the next couple of phases. This is a great financing tool for them. They've been wanting to close on our financing for a little while now, and so I'm here to speak in favor of the C-PACER program and ask that, you consider, directing staff to go ahead and, draft that ordinance so that we can start to finance some projects here. I have a couple other deals here in Franklin, but they did not want me to mention them quite yet. But I do think that once it's passed and we can start financing things here, people, building owners and developers become pretty interested in our unique loan funds. So you can definitely still go to a bank. We partner with banks all of our projects, we have a bank in the deal. So it's a, traditional bank that provides most of the financing, and then we provide just a little piece for that energy efficiency items. So we can do new construction or we could do rehab. So it's just a tool in your tool belt to provide developers that want to come here or building owners. And I am here, I'm in Nashville. I have my business cards if anybody wants to just call me and ask me questions. I've been doing lending my whole career, but CPACER financing for about 3 years now. So I can speak to, the program administrator or any kind of questions that you have.
So
Alderman
we're
Baggett.
we're looking for guidance on proceeding with the program overall, and specifically, from a staffing and implementation standpoint, some form of third-party administration seems to make the most sense to us because we are not a tax collector. We've really, had that arrangement worked out with Williamson County. We have had communication with Karen Paris, who's the county trustee on this, and she's aware. And I don't think there's any issue with us doing it, but they also aren't able to. I would not think we would expect them to step up with different additional staff resources to support the program. So it appears the route of the third-party administrator would likely be the best fit for us from a staffing and capacity standpoint. So we just want to probably identify a process to form that, that relationship with somebody to help administer the program for us. So we want your guidance on how to move forward, and then those specifics on the program implementation side, should you want to.
I think I had Alderman Baggett,
Sure,
unless he changed his mind.
So help me understand two things. But first, what the things that this was eligible for, the improvements, was very generic, and so I'm interested to know, as we have like a building code, the 2018 building code, I believe, that requires a lot of extensive, energy efficiency things, and so I'm just wondering how much overlap in what we're requiring in our buildings to be built now, and how much are requirements, or how much, you're not gonna have the exact number, but are the building developers and building owners going to be using this for stuff that we're already requiring, or is this for things that is over and above what our building code requires?
I believe it's the nature of the improvement. I think whether it meets a code requirement or goes above a code requirement, I don't think that's a matter here. I think it's a matter of the type of improvement. So if it's an efficiency in those categories, energy-wise,
And it's considered
et cetera.
qualifying
Yeah,
by the
As
program.
long as it qualifies for the program, I don't think the code compliance issue is really a defining factor in anything I've heard to this point. Would you?
So
your experience say different?
the Tennessee, so the way it works across the entire country is the state passes it first, and so the state passed it 2.5 years ago, and it's the Tennessee PACE legislation, and so now each city and county passes the ordinance to say, okay, we also will allow it. And we all have to abide by the Tennessee PACE legislation, and that specifies that anything that is new construction that can be financed with our money, the PACE lender money, has to be above code. And it's windows, doors, roof insulation, lighting, plumbing, mechanicals. But when you do a retrofit or an upgrade, all of that qualifies because you're putting in better than what was already there. And it should already meet code because obviously you want to install it.
New construction would have to go beyond code.
Yes, that's my understanding. That's the way we have a third-party energy engineer. All PACE lenders out there, we have to, per the Tennessee PACE legislation, hire a third-party energy engineer that goes through and looks at all the hard costs and says, yes, this meets the legislation, this meets it, and this is the dollar amount us lenders can finance, $10 million. And so that's actually part of the application we give to the third-party program administrator that checks the box.
My second question is, do you finance the third-party administrator's fees into this, into your loans?
Yeah.
So or is this a cost to the city? Is this going to
No. Nothing is a cost to the city.
be? Well, except the
city,
enforcement. The enforcement would be our our,
Potentially, if there was a default.
yeah,
Well,
but the,
in the situation of like if there's a mortgage lender and they go and default, the owners have defaulted and the lender, the first mortgage lien lender takes over, the city doesn't have any involvement. It's only if we aren't getting paid, we will ask you on our behalf to please go and do a tax lien sale. But that's never happened in the whole entire country since
well.
PACE came about 15 years ago.
And so this obligation stands about after your property tax.
Yes,
obligation.
yes,
So
we're
you
the
think it's
last
something
on the
that might
waterfall.
Completely default, but before the mortgage, yes. So it's taxes, then something like this, and then the mortgage itself.
So, but back really quickly, the Tennessee PACE legislation said that the third-party program administrator can provide a 1% fee up to $50,000, and then it's capped at that. So if we go and finance a $20 million deal, they still only get $50K.
and that's wrapped, and the borrower has to
We
pay
put that in the loan funds.
And so I'm just trying to understand, like, what's the downside to us? Or, I mean, is there one? And, I mean, what the cost is to the citizens and.
I mean, from our perspective, I think, especially if you use the third-party administration, that's a minimal staff burden to us. We just will have to keep tied into what's going on with it, just be aware. And if there's a default, then we've got to get more active. But, that sounds like that's fairly rare, but that is really the exception where you'd really have much significant city involvement. Otherwise, it's really a self-identified assessment that they're implementing through a combination of the lender and the third-party administrator, and you're just providing the authorization to allow it in your community.
One more question,
Anything
and then
else?
Alderman Peterson, but this is related kind of tangentially to our, or in my head it is. So do they have to bring equity to the table for your piece as well? And so this would help. Does that then count as equity towards the primary lender's loan?
So the way the Tennessee PACE legislation was written, none of us PACE lenders can give more than 25% of the of the appraised value. So no more than 25% LTV, and then combined, there cannot be more than 90% LTV with the mortgage lender and PACE together. But I will tell you that us as a lender and all the banks out there, we want more than 10% equity in any deal.
Okay.
So any equity is part of that capital stack will meet our requirements of equity.
Does this help a building developer or owner with cash flow at the time of pulling a permit?
No.
I mean, it wouldn't change any it wouldn't help or hurt?
So I guess I don't totally get it. So sorry.
Well, we're talking about impact fees and cash flow up front for our development community. Maybe we'll have a
So-
conversation offline. I don't want to drag
Yeah.
everyone through it.
I was
but
just going to say it's a loan that just covers those items I mentioned. We can't cover, any sort of anything outside of that: windows, doors, roof
Yeah.
insulation, lighting, plumbing, mechanicals.
To me, it's another ingredient of building a financing strategy for any given project, and this is just a newer tool to put in the mix. That's the way I
Okay.
kind of.
Thank you.
That's the way I understand it. At
I
least,
got
yeah.
Alderman Peterson, then Alderman Burton.
Well, I was thinking there's got to be some money involved here. It's not just exactly the same thing as if you didn't do it. So where is the extra money involved in it?
It's really a loan. It's targeted loan program. Is
I know
what it
that.
is. So it's a way for them to go through that program and get a targeted loan towards these efficiency elements of a project.
Well,
Good.
and what I'm saying is it's going to cost more than if you didn't do it. Doesn't it?
Well, and in my research, when I was looking at this program, and Nicole may have a different concept, but what it appeared to me was that for a commercial property owner, let's say if it's a rehab project and you've got all these things you've got to do, if you have work that fits into these categories, that the program, because it does require approval of the mortgage holder, because that lien stands ahead of the mortgage. And so it helps them obtain financing. And I believe the rate could be I think the rates can be a little bit better than their mortgage because of where it stands in that list of who gets paid. And so certainly that's where the lender having the PACE loan stand before the mortgage has that confidence that they are going to be repaid, certainly because of the process for collecting delinquent taxes is so strong. So
the owners of the factory in Franklin said that I can mention them. So the reason, like, for example, they already have a mortgage on their building. Instead of going back to that bank and asking for another loan to do these additional improvements, they could just come to us for a loan. It's the same process. We underwrite it identically to a bank, and we go to closing just like a bank, and you repay us over 25 years. And so it's attractive financing that not everybody wants to tap into, but some people see the benefit and want to. So our money is all private funds, and we lend it out just like a bank, and we get repaid just like a bank. So I hope that makes sense.
Are they getting tax credits because of energy efficiency or anything?
If they do, that's
That's
not
on
through
them.
us or with us, but sometimes if you go that extra mile, they tap into all of that. They know about the grant monies out there, the tax credits, but not through us.
Alderman Peterson?
Well, the other thing was, if the county is not approving this, I mean, what I should say, improving this idea, I'm not sure how that affects anything either.
Well, you have the authority to do it yourself. The issue with the county is just they are our property tax collector.
Exactly.
And so this is not, that function is not one that we would feel comfortable assigning to them, that we can't really assign to them. Yeah, so we're looking at how a third party could help us do it. So it's not that they're opposed to it, they just aren't implementing it at this time. And so we need to work with a third party to do that collection piece that is part of the voluntary assessment.
So what would that cost? I mean, I'm not asking
It
specifically.
doesn't cost us anything. It's rolled into that third-party administration fee.
Alderman Berger?
But that, just looking at this program from the state here to see what the drawbacks are, it absolutely costs the city zero money. This is all private entity, and we're just, and the county, it's not that they're dissing on it and saying they don't want to participate, it's just that they're not going to collect the money for us. That's another task that they would be beholden to us to do, so that's why we would have that third party, and we're not paying for that third party. So I don't see any drawbacks here.
I mean, the biggest amount of work you're going to have to do is setting it up. We'll have to do
Right.
the ordinance, we'll have to set it up, and then once we do that, we'll have to do probably an RFQ to find your third party. And after that, you just kind of let it go. I mean, the worst case scenario, I mean, we do have to approve the projects, but worst case scenario, we end up having someone that defaults. And maybe that never happens. But if
Yeah.
it does, I mean, I think we're equipped to handle that. Hopefully that won't happen.
How often has so far we've had defaults? I mean,
So my company is one of the top PACE lenders in the country. We're part of a nonprofit alliance of the CPACE lenders, and none of us have gone through a tax lien sale in the history of CPACER being around.
That's what I'm reading here too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says the CPACER, financiers, whatever. This type of financing, and this is interesting, can improve cash flow through the payment of assessments and reduce credit risk for a particular borrower as the assessment remains on the property. In addition, local governments that administrate the financing are benefited because the borrower uses the financing to build eco-friendly, energy-efficient improvements, which reduces energy consumption, carbon emissions, and green initiatives, whatever, blah, blah. So there's a lot, I'm just reading here on the Tennessee state side and everything, and about the property assessments and all that. And there's a number of, improvements for the city. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see any drawbacks.
So the reason why CPACER was originated like 15 years ago
Yeah.
was to make buildings more sustainable,
Right.
And decrease utility bills. That was the sole purpose.
And repairs, too.
So your NOI would go up, and the value of the building would go up. And I think a lot of developers these days understand that when you put in better windows, roof, doors, insulation, lighting, those utility bills really do go down.
Yep. Thank you.
What's the will of the board? You want
Yeah,
the staff to
very
work on it
interested
some?
in it. I think we ought to let,
Alderman Barnhill?
yeah.
Yeah, just a comment or two. I don't necessarily understand, I don't understand why we would need, I understand why we need the city's involvement because it's this state law that was passed. But I don't, I have a difficult time to understand the advantage to the city to be involved in this when we are exposing ourselves to a default and the collection of a loan or the amount that you've done what you've done with. So I'm not having a warm and cozy feeling that it's any advantage whatsoever.
It's not really an advantage, but there's not really a disadvantage. I mean, the point is this is one more tool that a developer can use, and we're just helping them get there. And there is no real liability on us. If they default, that's private. The only thing we would do if that happened is help them,
Collect.
with any sort of collection at the end. But like, a tax sale is probably not going to happen if there's a mortgage on it, because the mortgage company's not going to want that to happen. So the mortgage company will probably take control of that loan and then handle it that way. Probably. So there's not a lot of risk to you as a city. It's just one more tool for funding for developers.
And the reality is, if you're in a situation where that level of default happens, we're probably involved anyway, because they've defaulted on our taxes, they've defaulted on other things. So this would just be added in. It is something, though, I would say, as we look at the third-party administrator piece, we could ask questions about what services are provided in the case of a default, if there's support that they would provide. That is something we could at least research further to see if that's something so that it at least adds to the capacity if we're ever in that situation. So that might be something to look at.
Can you just give a paper trail or something of how the repayment is done?
Sure. So the third-party program administrator could collect the annual principal and interest, which is
Okay.
called an annual assessment, and then give it back to us. You also could write into your ordinance direct bill as an option, where all the PACE lenders just bill their clients, just the way a mortgage bank would bill their clients. Or, which can't work here, which is you would collect it and then give it back to us. So I think your options are third party or something called direct bill, and you literally ask all of us PACE lenders just to bill our clients ourselves, and then we collect it. So my understanding is PACE lenders wait about 3 years. We will give you the heads up and say, hey, we're not getting paid. Are you getting paid? And usually if we're not getting our annual assessment, you're probably not getting your real estate taxes either. Banks usually, step in and take care of the situation. But if 3 years go by and we have not received our annual payment, we will ask you to do a tax lien sale on our behalf. And in that waterfall process, you get paid first. If there's no money left over for us, we don't get paid. You get yourself, you're made whole before we get a penny, and that's only in a tax lien sale. And you mentioned that in that situation, if we're not getting paid, you're probably not getting paid also. There's some issues going on.
Well,
Yeah.
the county wouldn't wait 3 years.
They would not.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, I mean,
I'm
that-
just saying, us PACE lenders usually wait 3 years before we ask you to do a tax lien sale. But if you want to step in sooner, go for it.
Tennessee counties step in faster than 3, but some states take longer, but.
So we'll take this direction and work on drafting an ordinance and look at that third-party administrative piece. We want to minimize the burden from a capacity standpoint, but we want to show how we can facilitate the program as efficiently as possible. And also see if there's other information we can provide to help just understand what might happen in the case of
Yeah.
default. That might help protect us as well further. So
And
that's kind of the guidance I'm taking, if I'm summarizing that okay.
I just have one quick question. Does the introduction of the third-party administrator make the additional rate reduction less attractive to the developer?
Oh, so no matter where you are in Tennessee, what city or county, if the the trustee of Nashville is the third party, they're the program administrator, not third party. They're the program administrator. Everybody charges that 1% fee up to $50K. It's just part of the loan. The rates that we provide, the interest rate, the term, the amortization is identical whether there's a third-party program administrator or not. But you're going to see that fee in every city and county, everywhere.
And I think too, if this wasn't a good tool for people like the company that's doing the factory, they wouldn't be interested in it. Because these people are really good business people.
Yeah.
They're going to go after
Yeah.
what helps them to accomplish their goals, put in energy efficient, and come up to date in the 21st century with these buildings that have the needs to be, whether it's water, electric, whatever the efficiency is.
Yeah, I agree.
And we know that factory could use that. So, yeah, I like the fact that that's a good tool for people to accomplish those. Thanks.
Item 13, thank you for coming. Mays Creek Basin update.
So we have a crew coming up here from our water management team. This is something we identified late last year as a need. Sorry, I'm not plugged in, turned on. This is something we identified late last year as a need to update the Mays Creek Basin study itself, understand how that area could be served. We did have a specific property owner request around whether they would be a declined service, but how that would work. And we wanted to make sure if that happened, that we didn't inadvertently eliminate the ability for others in the basin to get service. So we're trying to make sure we had that refined and understood. And so our team, working with consultant, went through and updated that. And we have the water management team. We have Michelle and Ben and Scott and Brian all here to kind of walk through that with you tonight and show you the overview of what we've learned in refining and updating that basin plan. So take it away.
So I, obviously, you know who I am. So I've got my Ben, who is our infrastructure and development manager, who kind of manages all the growth within the city. Scott is one of our engineers who does all of the availabilities that you look at. And then I think I guilted Brian into coming up here. So you've all seen his mug before. So they're going to do the presentation. I'm just the slide turner at this point, but I'll be available for questions.
Got to know your role.
I know. I know my lane.
All right, thank y'all. I know this has been long awaited. Hope that we can kind of give you guys a piece to the puzzle and help you guys make some decisions. So we'll start with slide 3. So the Mays Creek Basin Plan, it dates back to around 2001. June 2006, there was a study that indicated about 3.5 million gallons a day average flow sewer. And then the Basin Plan was updated in 2013. And that's the proposed interceptor layout. Update densities and expected average daily flows were around 4.4 million gallons per day. And this is just a little bit of background on the overall Mays Creek study. In 2016, a consultant was commissioned to update the study from 2013. The consultant was to evaluate the options, provide recommendations to staff for the growth projections over approximately the next 10 years. And that study resulted in the need for an additional clean water facility south of I-65 and an alternative regional station option to spur the development growth within the area, provided similar to kind of the West Haven model. Also mentioned in the study was the idea of decentralized sewer systems to be constructed temporarily while the city's second funding for the construction of clean water facilities south of I-65. An additional population and density study was suggested to reevaluate the sewer utility. In 2016, the consultant study estimated total build out of 5.2 MGD. That's inside the urban growth boundary. The study was conducted in relation to the development of essentially the Smith property, and to date, the Smith property, they've not moved forward. So CDM's task was, in 2023, CDM was selected to update the Mays Creek Basin in accordance with the latest growth projections provided by the city planning. Signs of growth have been more frequent, and requests have been made for serving the Mays Creek Basin with a sewer utility. And what kind of Michelle was alluding to, 2051 Wilson Pike is an example of the request that we've had to staff. So CDM's task was updating the flow projections, evaluate interceptor sizing, provide likely profile depths for future interceptors, and that is a key. That's important for us to look at the overall basin. And the reason for that is because if we don't understand what the depths are going to be, the easement sizes, that type of thing, it's really hard for us to determine where those will go in the future. Review of the interim solution that was discussed in 2016, kind of the West Haven approach, update and provide a potential solution to that. So approximately 60% of the Mays Creek Basin is undeveloped. What has been developed was done through Williamson County and is utilizing on-site disposal step systems. So Mays Creek Basin breakdown, the flow estimates provided are an average daily flow, and the nearest term growth is approximately 0.8 MGD. The nearest term is defined as current estimates of sanitary sewer flow based on known flows and low growth factors. Moderate growth is 2.7 MGD. That's defined as approximately halfway point, 20 to 30 years based on growth patterns. The full build out inside the urban growth boundary and the rest of the basins considered and step systems connecting in the future is 7.6 MGD. That's all available land is developed to its maximum density based on Envision Franklin, and this takes into account the minimal no development of slopes greater than 14%. The flow projections are based on the 2023 Envision Franklin planning document, so we tried to work through that and make sure that it's all in alignment. So actual planning and permitting of development will drive the timelines for flow of additional construction to see what flows in the area, or what projected flows in the area. So the Mays Creek interceptor layout, for this exercise, we did use 2018 LiDAR to determine interceptor placement. That's a new tool that we've been fortunate enough to utilize. It kind of takes all the vegetation off, lets you see the actual topography of the ground, and then you can get a lot better idea of like the interceptor placement, that type of thing. It's pretty neat. 25 stream channel crossings are noted, but minimized impacts to existing wetlands and 60-foot buffers were considered in the placement of the interceptors and location for the easements. Slopes of greater than 14% were also protected. The pipe sizing, we used TDEC sloping requirements, manhole spacing, minimum depth of 7 foot was what we considered for our run of pipe. And then we updated flow information indicates a maximum interceptor size. The updated flow information indicates a maximum interceptor size of 36 inch with submains in accordance with the density allotted for the sub basin. So essentially, the biggest interceptor that we see in the area is a 36 inch based on the flows we project. Sewer profiles have been completed with a maximum projected depth of 11 feet. That's kind of important too. The deeper you go, the wider you have to have the easement. So 11 feet's a good number. And this allows us to understand the potential easement requirements, as I was mentioning. One thing I want to note here is, as properties develop and grading plans are determined, that's going to drive the actual depth of the interceptors. But we did try to keep it, like I said, at the 11-foot mark, and we think that that's going to be a pretty fair mark to hold.
Can I ask you what the average you usually see as a depth? For these?
It varies. So
Isn't it
your average
15?
depth is between probably 7 and 9 feet. That's pretty average across the city. In some areas where you have to go cut through hillsides and then through valleys, we have 15, 18 feet deep. So it's not uncommon, but we do try to keep it as shallow as possible for maintenance and just emergency repairs. The deeper, the longer it takes to maintain it.
Thank you.
So so the Hobos repair that we just talked about was about 20 feet deep. We didn't have a wide enough easement, which required us to purchase additional temporary construction easements. So really important to understand that us doing maintenance to the pipe, we need to have a large enough area to be able to do that.
Correct. So the interim solution, the regional lift station, so we kind of took the West Haven model and looked at if we're going to serve Mays Creek and what's the kind of the likelihood of what's developable. It looks as if Murfreesboro Road and north of Murfreesboro Road would come online before those farms south. So in 2016 and 2023, the Mays Creek Basin Study both reviewed a sanitary sewer alternative that allows for development of sanitary sewer utility servicing the central and north Mays Creek Basin. So essentially that's Murfreesboro Road north. Using the West Haven model, a regional lift station may be constructed south of Murfreesboro Road to pump sanitary sewer flow to the future water reclamation facility. Design, planning, and easement acquisition and construction may take up to 8 to 10 years. That's a possibility. Water reclamation facility is not yet constructed. All flow from this area would in the interim be treated at the current water reclamation facility on Claude Yates. Based on the current flow projections, 3.3 million gallon per day would be phase one. An alternative requires a 3.7 mile, 16-inch force main installation. As flows within the area increase, additional pump station force main capacity may be required. In 2016, the proposed gravity interceptor and lift station was estimated to cost $23 million. In today's money, that's around $30 million. The costs have increased substantially over time, exacerbating the financial impacts and development within this basin.
So Ben noted that 8 to 10 year window for that collection system. There's about a 10-year window on the first phase of the Southeast plant as well. So that's something to think about in terms of, again, one of the things we've been talking about is how you align infrastructure with development and land use components. So that's something to bear in mind in this area. Should that be where we go, that's how that might line up with capacity that goes to that Southeast plant. So just another how the pieces fit together kind of thing to think about.
Yes, ma'am. You have to cut through some county areas back to what's currently city. In 2016, a consultant provided information related to decentralized sewer systems. The consultant evaluated the option and found that the addition of decentralized sewer systems would likely require 30 to 60 wastewater systems in this Mays Creek Basin. Information was provided noting the city that would be required to provide additional employees and equipment for daily maintenance and operations of the decentralized systems. So each new decentralized system was estimated in 2016 between $800,000 and $1.5 million. And that's an additional $500,000 for operations and maintenance. We did reach out to some suppliers that do different systems today, but we did not hear back on what an estimated cost was.
To maintain
for the maintenance, the maintenance and the construction.
Because that
so we were trying.
The maintenance number seems high.
That's based on
what it costs to put it in, right?
So that's based on the employees and whatever it would take to maintain it. So it's kind of all lumped into that one number, and that's an estimate. So it could be a little bit high, a little low.
So if we're looking at that number, I don't want to spend too much time over-indexing on it, but a system costs you, let's call it $1 million to put it in, and then $500,000 each year after that to service it.
Yeah, and that
per install.
That's like the high end of it. So it could be up to $500,000.
It's an average over its life. So probably initially when equipment's brand new and shiny, but as you get toward later in years when things start falling apart, it's not maintained as well. It's going to take a lot more stuff to replace it. You got sampling that's required for TDEC for analysis that would have to be collected and then brought back.
And that's not gravity.
Correct.
Sewer, it's,
Correct. That's a step system.
So
correct.
Electricity, all chemical cost, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So it's essentially its own little wastewater treatment facility on that side.
And some of those are put in and maintained until gravity is available, then they go offline.
Correct. We'll get to a slide that kind of talks about that a little bit. So So just to put this in perspective, 30 decentralized systems in 2016 was around $24 million. It basically equates to 31 million today. And let's see. Yeah, that's to construct. 15 million in today's to maintain. 15 million in 2016 to maintain, and that's roughly 19 million today to maintain. And that's like she said, kind of over the lifespan, whatever issues you may have. The biggest drawback to these are it requires reserved land for drip irrigation of effluent water, and that limits the land that can be utilized for other purposes of development. So in 2016, staff recommended against the decentralized systems due to the overall cost of these systems and the life expectancy of 30 to 50 years with the additional requirement for staffing and equipment. It exceeded staffing and budgetary constraints. So we did recommend against that. Centralized sewer was established as the most efficient option with the new South Water Reclamation Facility. So this is kind of the slide that talks a little bit about being able to connect those. So future connections to centralized sewer, city sewer from decentralized septic tank and fluid pump systems or STEP systems must be considered. STEP systems are designed with a solids tank on the property that's being served and an effluent pump that discharges into a common effluent force main in the street. All solids are restricted to waste tanks on site. So those do require essentially a septic tank that has to be pumped, and you're only taking the effluent water to be treated. Effluent force mains discharge the effluent wastewater into a decentralized filtration station where it's treated and then applied to land set aside for the drip irrigation. STEP systems are not designed as centralized pressure or gravity systems. To connect STEP systems to centralized sewer systems, each system would require an evaluation and a possible new design to ensure proper service connection. STEP systems are designed with specific permitting requirements that may not align with Franklin permitting requirements and negatively impact Franklin's permitted treatment capacity. Additional costs may be required to construct gravity sewer systems in a built environment. So it's not that we can just go and connect effluent lines. If you actually are planning to serve the whole area, it may require complete new design to service that area, which, as we know, in our capital budget, that gets very expensive.
So what is the individual cost to one of these systems right here?
So that's what I was referring to. In 2016, I think the cost was $800,000 to $1.5 million to actually install it. But we did not reach, the consultants didn't reach back out to us with the actual cost of today's money installing.
Talking about converting it.
Actually, I'm talking about just
Installation, yeah.
System itself.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you just look at kind of what we saw, it was about I don't know, 25% increase, something like that. So you're probably looking at a couple $1 million to install. So connecting decentralized sewer systems and centralized systems present additional challenges that must be realized before connections. So that's something we wanted to make sure that you guys are aware of. So the City of Franklin, through city staff and administrators, are exploring the development infrastructure alignment for the project growth, timing and scale of both timing and scale of the South Water Reclamation Facility. Presenting to BOMA a presentation was made to BOMA in June of 24 to demonstrate the need for South Water Plant and the timing of exhaust of current capacity at the Claude Yates Water Reclamation Facility. Currently, the flows considered in Mays Creek Basin in sustaining the need for the South Water Reclamation Facility are those developments currently vested. So essentially, only the developments that are vested were in that presentation in June. So anything that comes after that was not considered in that capacity. Mays Creek Basin flows projected flows, as noted in this presentation, has significant impact on the scale of the future South Water Reclamation Facility and the timing of its proposed phasing. So everything kind of basically hinges on phasing and timing for the South Plant and Mays Creek. So in conclusion, the centralized collection systems are vital to public health and clean water in accordance with the Clean Water Act of 1972. Mays Creek Basin should be served by centralized sewer in accordance with the current and past City of Franklin Basin studies establishing clean water and environmentally friendly options. Serving the area with centralized sanitary sewer is beneficial to both the environment and future Franklin residents within the basin. So given that, we did not want to go too deep into all of the math that was used, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
So this gives us guidance on where lines need to be so that we can work with specific property owners if they have requests on that. We won't get into specifics on the one property owner. I don't think he's here tonight, but we will touch base. We've had an initial discussion with him reviewing the basic components of this study. We wanted you to see the full thing first, but the general concept was how do we work with him to provide for the easements that are needed for the rest of the basin to have the option for service down the line and still allow him to pursue whatever he would like to pursue, whether that's in the city or in the county. And he seemed generally agreeable with that. Oh, you're here. I'm sorry. You look different with your glasses.
Yeah, I know.
Come on up.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. But that's the general concept. We could get more specific down the line, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And I did want to bring up that, like I think we alluded to it, but this study was requested by the board when we were talking about the availability for Dean White's property. We have tentatively scheduled his availability discussion for CIC on August 22nd. So I did that as kind of to get that timetable, hit that deadline to get it on the agenda. If that's something that you guys want to continue to discuss on that date, that's great. If not, we can move that. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of it. And I was going to notify Dean as soon as I got your nod off on that. So.
Yeah, well.
If you'd like, I just, that.
Thank you, Ms. Berger. I want to reiterate that everything Eric has said is absolutely correct. I've talked with Vernon quite a bit too, and the guys in the Water Services Division, they seem to be, it's been emotionally difficult and a very frustrating experience. There was something, if I could ask a question, as I understand it, is there a concept where there might be a pump station located at the future sewer reclamation facility that would serve in an interim to provide service to the basin before 8 to 10 years is a daunting time period.
So essentially what we identified in 2016, or the study identified in 2016, was the possibility for kind of an interim regional type of pump station that would capture flow from the upper portions of Mays Creek Basin and pump that back to be treated at our centralized facility on Claude Yates. CDM actually looked at that and provided a little bit of input as well that is an option. Essentially, what we would want to take away with the board is if they want to explore an option of doing that with kind of an interim pump station and a force main back, we would start the process of looking at that to see what kind of costs that would incur and what type of size and that type of thing would be for the overall basin. But there is an option that the basin study kind of alludes to if we're in agreement that station could be south of Murfreesboro Road with an interim pump station and force main that would carry the flow back to town. But that's what we would look to the board for.
But that would
guidance.
Theoretically be a shorter time frame than 8 to 10 years.
It could be. I mean, it's all going to depend on what type of sizing and engineering has to go into that. But it not necessarily a time frame issue more than just what it could serve before the South Plant came online.
The nature of development that's proposed
correct
is a huge factor in that too, correct. Understanding what that would be. And for us, it's a balancing of capacity because you're treating in the interim, you're treating at the existing plant when ultimately you'd want it at the southeast plant. So how do you bridge that for how long? And there will be some balancing of capacity in whatever you do, should you build the southeast plant, because you will shift some to the southeast that will free capacity in the northern areas that will help with potential redevelopment that you could see or development that you could see. So it's all a matter of, again, aligning capacity and timing with when other development might move forward or impact us.
So my application is quickly approaching 2 years. And I don't think any action has taken place. As you know, we did a very rudimentary plan based on there never being sewer or no foreseeable sewer in the area. You know, my greatest concern, given my age and what I'm hoping to have happen before I die, is I think the sewer system idea is very definitely what I, as a citizen and certainly as a landowner in that area, I would prefer to see that. And I think our discussions, at least in my mind, we were talking about the possibility of doing a decentralized system that was designed in a way that it could hook into the sewer system when it was available. But the whole issue, I guess, about that expense associated with a decentralized system that would only be effective for a relatively short period of time, you know, brings in a whole new set of business issues. But I do hope that the board would encourage the department to continue to talk with people in the area. And so, you know, what's been frustrating with my family, I've got my daughter and son here with me. They've been very angry with me for not having a clear path forward on this project that you know, this is the biggest investment my family's ever made, and I've essentially looked foolish for the investment. So I'm looking for a way to for the phoenix to rise out of the ashes, so to speak, and so to whatever extent that y'all could consider the people, we want to cooperate. We feel like we're getting a lot of cooperation. This is the first significant move forward that I've seen in these 2.5 or close to 3 years I've owned this property. So I very much appreciate the fact that y'all gave me a chance to speak here today, and for your continued interest.
So one last thing that I'll add is with this profiles that we did, we have looked at Mr. White's property and how that sewer line crosses properties. We have an outline for that and a profile. We'll bring that forward at the CIC with his availability so that you guys have the opportunity to look at how it affects his property if you deny the availability or you approve it.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, nobody raised their hand, so I'm moving on, Alderman Baggett.
Yeah.
So if
this
you
is
want
a
to be
big,
recognized,
so thank you.
please.
Appreciate it, Mayor. This is a big deal. And it's not related to your property, but because this impacts a lot of, like, essentially our entire eastern development, you know, trajectory. And the cost, and honestly, whether or not and how big the southeastern plant is. And so continually here, this is not you know, the staff presents we got a 5-lane road out there with the state, and we've got kind of a more cloudy view of infrastructure when it comes to sewer. So you have actually like a ripe area for smart growth, which is why what we've done in Envision Franklin. But this continues to be kind of the you know, the puzzle piece. I don't really see I mean, your solution is to do a centralized system. What is the exact recommendation that you have for us?
Clearly, the most efficient way to provide service is through a centralized system. You see how these decentralized, you don't save money over time. You end up breaking it into a bunch of smaller systems that cost more collectively and don't perform as well and don't have the capacity and aren't environmentally as good in my view. That aren't as proven. Let's put it that way. So I think that's what the question is. It's a significant investment, and to this point, we've really looked at to say the developer is going to need to help that happen. Some of what you can consider is, are there ways to advance pieces of that and do recaptures down the line as we plan for the plant? These elements of major collection lines of kind of the backbone of that collection system is something else to think about as well. I think when we've looked at the improvement district concept, while the plant can't fall in that,
Right.
these transmission lines might. That's something for us to do more research. I'm not saying definitively
No,
we need
understood.
to hear me, but that's something to think about. Could that be something that gets folded into a broader district that captures that cost or spreads that cost over time? That is another way to advance it, get it done, and then bring that cost back. So that's the concept of how we do that, and the direction that we look at is how you want to align that, or how that relationship works when people come to us and say, we want to develop. What's that look like? We've got to sync it up with how we have the capacity to provide the service, whether that's the interim of a force main to the existing plant, or how it aligns with when we bring the first phase of a southeast plant online. So this is all kind of the pieces of the puzzle and the timing that you do it. But clearly a centralized system is in our view, the best solution in terms of capacity, reliability, and environmental sustainability.
I am interested in the short term. 8 to 10 years is quite some time. And I don't know, I mean, based on the presentation you all made last month, was it last month or June? Anyway. But we really don't have capacity now for much more additional development at the current plant. And so there's going to be there is one that is going to be required. We've got to decide where that's going to go.
Yeah.
And it's constrained by road infrastructure costs in the southeast and sewer infrastructure costs in the east. And I think this is something we really got to get our heads around, because it's going to be a significant infrastructure cost wherever. Now there's some to the west, I guess, opportunity for some development, but I think this is extremely important. And I do think that something in the short run, because would be beneficial if it could tie in, while we figure some of the larger infrastructure cost out. If there's a mode and method and best practice that you all could figure out, that we do use that, where you tie in and allow I think we did something similar to West Haven, right? Before, when 96 wasn't, not 96, Mac Hatcher wasn't completed. You can only do X amount until
you
that
had
traffic
a
is-
cap. Yeah.
I think that, I see this being in a stalled mode. And then if you want us to vote on a treatment plant, we have to think about the ratepayers, because if there aren't additional rooftops that come online after we build that new plant, then that debt and that cost is going to be put onto the existing ratepayers. So it's not a chicken and egg. It's when we jump in, we got to go, or else the people who are existing customers are going to have to pay that debt. So it's a huge balance. This deserves a lot of time and I know y'all, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Great job, by the way. A lot to dig in on, but I think we as a board need to understand, I don't know what we need to do to get to these kinds of decisions there, and when we're to make them. And that's kind of where I'm at. When do we get to hone in on some of this?
Well, one of the things we did several years ago, and we're updating it now, is this what we call a development feasibility outlook, and we looked at short-term and medium-term and long-term development capability, and it really looked at where there was infrastructure, where there could be, and the likelihood and timing of that, as well as really, quite frankly, what you would see come from it. The almost a cost benefit of what you see come from development. And this area was in that medium-term range. It was not as immediate because you had significant extensions to come. Whereas the Southeast, it's a little closer because there's more infrastructure already in place. So you're really very much in the same place you were. And, while that seems like a long time, and for property owners, it is, but it's also pretty consistent with when the plant would come online and these other elements and how you might stage, again, manage growth over time at this pace that we have seen that's been consistent literally over 40 years in this community, that we could continue to project out realistically over the next 40 to 50 years. That I think you're fairly well aligned, but we want to help you look at how these decisions fit with one another. And that's what you're really kind of seeing, a piece of this puzzle every meeting in one way or another. And it does deserve a lot of time and effort. And there are key decisions, especially around the timing of the plant, that really will drive that. And that's one of the targets I've set for you all, is trying to get a good decision on the first phase of the plant, treatment plant in the Southeast by really by the end of this calendar year, I think would really be helpful to us. So that's what we want to keep feeding towards, what you need to help facilitate those decisions.
Alderman Berg.
Okay, I think bottom line here too, and Patrick was mentioning what he did, is Mr. White is trying to make a decision what he can do, what's actually going to be or not going to be available to him. So I think there's a discussion that we have to figure out here, if it's even feasible to do some kind of decentralized system or anything that we could provide or help approve or do anything in the short term, not 10 years out, but something that he would be able to hang his hat on to get started to realize what he wants to accomplish. And if it's not feasible, then after the study, we've seen this, then we have to make a decision. Do we have to give him some direction? So that's where I think that we have to, leaving this meeting tonight, I always say, what next? What's the action? If he gets up and leaves and you all get up and we're going on to the next time, what's the action that's coming out of this discussion right here and now that's going to give this man an answer to how he will proceed or not? And I think.
Well, we have a number of answers.
Well, would you tell me how that's gonna
We know
help?
what we need in terms of easements to provide service to the
On that
rest of the
property,
basin.
yeah.
So we've answered the question we didn't have an answer to
Right,
before.
we had that.
And then from there, he's got some decisions to make too around how he might be able to use his property, developing
In the
county or developing in the city. And, as we get guidance from you, we'll be able to answer
Yeah.
how we might build out a collection system. What is our
Yes.
expectation of the landowner development side versus what you are able and willing to do in terms of kind of
Yeah.
the spine of that collection system?
So when
I mean,
does-
that's really where we're
When does that
where we're
come
at.
for that discussion?
CIC.
Where,
His
when and
specific
where?
is on CIC August 22nd.
Okay, it is.
But,
I just wanna make sure we
the
did.
longer term is really a policy guidance question
Right.
from the board of how far do you want to get involved in building out and what
Exactly.
tools you want to use in building out that collection system.
Yeah.
To this point, we've largely relied on the developer side to do that. We build the plant, they help build the collection system. That's generally how that has worked.
Yeah.
So if you want us to be more involved in
Yeah.
doing
What
elements
does
of that
look like?
sooner
Mhm.
or at a more defined timeline that is not only development driven, but is an element of that sooner, then that's a different question. And that gets involved with how we fund that,
Right, the policy on
either
that.
through your initiatives or through an improvement district type of approach for an area of the community. Those are all
Sure.
some of the pieces that we're looking at right
Okay.
now.
Alderman Peterson.
And you can
No, go ahead.
Look at
I'm
that.
just going to add, so at CIC, what will typically happen is you're very well aware, is the availability will either be approved or denied, right? Oh, thank you. So what will happen at CIC is the availability will either be approved or denied. But from that is what we'll make the recommendation saying if it's denied, we recommend this contract language, right? So if you want to deny it, we may not have that specific contract language set up to be able to say we need to have easements for the centralized system in place yet. That's I guess that's where if we were to do it right now, we might not have all of that.
Yeah. So,
assessment district
what
area set
happens
up
if it comes to
talked about.
CIC and then we deny it? He might want to pursue that in the county at that juncture now, and then later pursue something later more extensive through the city when that becomes available, or if we are agreeable in this board to move ahead with doing something in that area in a temporarily decentralized system until total sewer and gravity sewer come on board for the better region. But, you know, yeah, he'll have a decision to make on that. And granted, now we know where it goes across the property. So he's identified that so he can have a better idea of how he plans that out. I just want to make sure that we're moving ahead so we can start making those broader decisions. We'll do CIC and then we broader decision and discussion
As a
on
board.
this board and maybe some policy or where we want to move to. What's
Where we're
the,
trying to get.
yeah, where the board wants to move. Thank you.
Alderman Peterson.
Well, the other comment that I want to say is that this would not be just paid for by city money. Remember, it is a totally different thing. The water and the sewer are separate from like our taxes or anything like that. And so we need to look at it that way also, I believe, and think about where that money would come from to do any big project like this. And we've been fortunate in the sense that some of the money that we spent recently, though, was also given to us by not just the state, but I've forgotten what. But I'm just saying to you that the people who are in that are using this the city sewer. I mean, the sewer is really just people. I mean, we're the only one that do this. The sewer. I mean, like Mill Crofton and some of the other water. You know, Harpeth Valley and other people do the water, but the sewer really is for all the water utility districts. You know, it comes through the Franklin sewer. But the thing is, though, we need to look and see what this means money-wise. I mean, would all of the people that are using the sewer in Franklin going to be paying this much more money every month? Because we try to build something like this. We need to think about that.
Couple comments. Alderman Berger, I think you were pretty much right on with what I was expecting or hoping to see is some relief for Mr. White and the property he's trying to develop, okay? I mean, I've seen him as just about as often as I have myself here, and I've been for the last 17 years here. Prior to that, a little bit before that. So do whatever we need to do on that. Now, what happens if what happens if we deny sewer availability? What happens?
We have some conditions that we would like to have, some, considerations. We want to make sure that the easements, we get the easements for the future interceptors, and they're in a way that we can go in at a later date and put the pipe in, maintain it, things like
Okay.
that. So we would want to see that the site grading isn't going to be done in such a way that our easements are, inaccessible. We want to make sure that building is done in such a way that it does not encroach or hinder the easement, things like that. We've got some language in the availability memo for the 22nd that discusses that. So we've got a kind of a bulleted list of a wish list, I guess, just to protect our ability to sewer that area in the future.
Alderman
Then he
Potts.
would have a decision to make about how he wants to develop his property.
Exactly. Or he has the decision.
He
Right.
does.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Quick statement.
I've recognized Alderman Potts. I'll wait
Oh,
on you
I'm
just
sorry.
a minute.
That's all right, Mr. White. I'll be quick. I just have a request for staff. Thank you for the investment of time and energy that y'all put into the presentations and then also the future meeting that'll lead up to 822. I have a minor request, and that is when we put together the next presentation, can you actually just give us either some horizontal timeline? Here's, as you were saying, we're working towards Q4 and trying to get these decisions before we get into 2025. Can you help us, just give us some timelines that take us out from where we are now, 5 years, 10 years, get us 20 years out as we're talking about the southeastern plant? I think that's part of the visual, because what you've put here is good information, but I find myself skipping back and forth between slides on just trying to create that visual in my own head, and it might even help some others here as well. So,
Sure.
Again,
That's-
Mr. White,
yeah.
appreciate you and
That's
your
in
family
process.
being here.
Yeah, if I could just make one comment. My concern is building a house or maybe 5 houses. You know, I'm not looking to do a Poplar Woods ever. And I do want to say that if I don't necessarily agree with y'all's assessment of decentralized systems, particularly on an interim basis, but you guys are so much more knowledgeable about those things. I'm talking to other people that have different opinions, and their cost estimates that I'm getting are considerably different. But, you know, that, who knows if we're comparing apples to apples? I suspect we're not. And I do think that if there were a policy that would allow the use of decentralized, if it was a way it could ultimately work into the sewer system where it's not difficult to connect. I mean, because my property, the lowest part of my property obviously is along Clovercroft Creek where the interceptor would be going, and all of my property naturally falls to that area. So to me, it seemed like we could do like a mini gravity system that goes down to some sort of temporary system designed so that it ultimately connects in. And I think we talked generally about those concepts. Time's ticking.
Last point, because this is a threat, is that I think Mr. White and I think other property owners, because they can do that in the county, decentralized systems, correct? That I think we run a risk if we don't start thinking possibly creatively about this, is that you end up with a patchwork Swiss cheese basin where 500, how many acres do you have?
I've just have 116.
116.
But the Smith property's 500.
Yeah, or I
and
just
that
picked the
joins
5
us.
number out of my head, but
Yeah.
500, 100 here, 100 there, 100, and all of a sudden, this math, and they opt to go to the county. Now, we can deny them, but we're going to have, there are all those little Swiss cheese holes are going to be Mr. White sitting in front of us, and we're going to feel bad for him. We're going to want to help him out, and we're all of a sudden incrementally increasing the cost of all of this down the line. So maybe I don't generally like the idea of the decentralized or the step systems, but we kind of have to play defense in this basin a little bit too, if there ever is going to be a financially feasible long-term option, because in the next 10 years, how many more property owners might want to get out, develop in the county, and they can. And are we going to sit up here, or whoever's up here, going to sit up here and tell them no? I think this is, by the way, pardon me, this goes through your property, other properties, and I think it's just sitting here listening to you and some of this stuff, that if we end up with a Swiss cheese Mays Creek Basin, then it's going to create more expensive problems. So I don't know how that, I wouldn't be in favor of these step systems in general, because I do think long-term it's the smart thing to do, but there are a lot of concerns out here, not just the cost, but what the people, and by the way, you get residents in here all the time saying, we don't want this area to be developed in the city. So how many of those property owners will then make that choice over the next 10 years, and we end up, the math not being able to work for us? So my request would be go and look at that through those lenses too, possibly. Like, is there a risk? Is that really a threat? What I've just discussed, is that a threat to us financially long term, or do we just roll the dice? It's not rolling the dice, but do we bank that more people aren't going to want to develop in the city, or do we?
Decentralized systems by their nature limit the options for development. There are far more options on the centralized system. So that's
Isn't the Grove on a
major
decentralized?
factor.
The Grove's on decentralized. And as we think, do we want to opt for a property like not that we're actually, it's not possible to build a Grove in any of our green fields because of Envision Franklin, but do we want to think about ways that we can actually have development in our UGB instead of people choosing to go out? Because we've got to pay for all. We got to pay for the plant. We got to pay for these lines, like Alderman Peterson said. That's a complex question, and I don't expect an answer. That's what we're having to deal with. Thank you.
Item 14, Resolution 2024-51, initiating the annexation process, draft plan of services for the possible annexation of 10.6 acres located west of Lewisburg Pike, south of Henpeck Lane at 1228 Lewisburg Pike. So this is just go ahead, Joey.
Yes, this is the annexation initiation for 1288 Lewisburg Pike. It's the Gateway Church, if you're familiar with it, near Berry Farms. They are requesting annexation initiation. The property is not contiguous to the current city limits, but it is within our UGB, and Envision Franklin places it in the neighborhood commercial design concept. And the institutional uses such as churches are recommended as a primary use within neighborhood commercial, so it is supported. You have a draft plan of services, and kind of just give you the main bullet points for this. Overall, it's meets most of, or we can serve it fairly easily with the exception of water sewer, which is the main reason they're requesting annexation into the city. So it's just important to note that the extension of sanitary sewer to this particular property would have to cross a neighboring property, and I'll point it out here on the screen. It's this larger property along Henpeck Lane at 2397 Henpeck Lane. And that property has requested neither sanitary sewer nor annexation into the city at this time. So as the neighboring property will have access to sanitary sewer, it is recommended that both properties be annexed at the same time, or alternatively, at a minimum, that an annexation agreement be provided by the neighboring property. So the property owner requesting annexation, so the church, would be required to obtain and record at their expense an easement across the neighboring property in order to serve this property with sanitary sewer. So overall, we're recommending approval of Resolution 2024-51.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think annexation, if Gateway wants to come in, then, I support it. This is down in Ward 3. The one thing I would actually call out is the map that you have pulled up right now. We look at that intersection. That intersection is going to be signalized in the future as the Long Lane Overpass Project, as we have affectionately named it. That will have a right turn lane, a left turn lane, and I just want to make sure that planning has this on the radar. If this is a property that's going to be annexed in, that we now incorporate this into the plan to make sure that we address it properly for traffic.
Yeah, I'm sure engineering is looking at that. They review all of our initiations, annexation requests as well, and they really keep close track of the major thoroughfare plan and how we can incorporate it into all the various annexations that come in.
Excellent. I just want to be on record and make sure that everybody knows.
Sure.
Thank you.
Then item 15, which is a resolution initiating the annexation process, draft plan of services for the possible annexation of 43 acres located west of Lewisburg Pike and south of Goose Creek Bypass at 1462 Lewisburg Pike.
Thank you. Another annexation initiation, this time for actually two parcels just north of the Southvale PUD subdivision on Lewisburg, south of Goose Creek Bypass that's currently under construction. So the first parcel is along Lewisburg Pike, and then there's a larger parcel to the west of it, as you can see on the maps here. So they are contiguous to the city limits, and they are within the UGB. So the smaller parcel along Lewisburg is within the single-family residential design concept, which we're all pretty familiar with. The western parcel is now within the neighborhood green design concept, and that's part of our update to Envision Franklin. So just as a reminder, for neighborhood green, Envision Franklin states that new development should identify natural features that are to be preserved through 60% of dedicated open space, and that new development should offer a variety of housing types. There is a plan of services as well with this one. And again, overall, no major concerns other than that the property lies, because the two parcels are not adjoining each other, they would have to be developed through separate plans. So future development of the western parcel would be dependent on future extension of utility lines and road network in the immediate area of and access to Lewisburg Pike. So they would just have to figure that out through two separate plans. So overall, again, staff recommends approval of Resolution 2024-62.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So does staff have any concerns as we're looking at these roads? I feel like I may have either spoken with staff or seen some designs as far as the larger parcel having connectivity. Is the road that is north of the parcel going to make that connection?
Are you referring to this up here?
Yes.
Okay. That we just don't know yet. That would have to be worked out through a specific plan for development of that parcel.
Okay.
And then they would be required to connect it to both all directions as much as possible to the existing road networks. So they could not build without any access to it.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Item 16, which is Resolution 2024-63, resolution authorizing the use of competitive seal proposal procurement method for choosing the service provider for consulting services for the City of Franklin Preservation Plan update.
So this was included in your fiscal 25 budget, and we'll have Emily and Kelly talk about the specifics.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Huffer. I'm the city's preservation planner, and the city's current preservation plan dates back to 2001, and a separate battlefield preservation plan dates back to 2004, and so they're both over 20 years old and have accomplished many of the goals and action items in both of the plans. With this update to the plan, the goal is to cover a broad spectrum of preservation strategies with priorities inclusive of Civil War and battlefield related preservation efforts and action items so that it is one holistic plan other than two separate plans. And the plan will be inclusive of a high level of detail across a broad scope of preservation goals, specialized consultant skills, significant engagement with stakeholders, professional photography, and extensive drafting work to update the plan. And so with this, as Eric Stuckey has commented, that this funding has been approved, and that with this we would have the authority to proceed with advertising the request for proposals, and then hopefully a vote later this month. And we'll bring back the scope of services later this year, and hopes to hire a consultant by the end of this year.
Services yet, or do you have the scope, or is that like the scope of this plan? We have the scope of the plan yet, or is it like what we're going to go out and get RFPs for?
Mm-hmm. We are working on drafting it and kind of finalizing it right now.
Thank you. I think including something in there about looking into our historic overlay and other areas of town. I've spoken with both of you all actually probably about this. Just making sure that we have a lot of historic properties that are not in the overlay, but our plan incorporating possible, not just adding to the historic overlay, but incorporating into our zoning ordinance possibly some preservation things, some way to incorporate preservation outside of just our 16 block and the HPO. So, but that scope, I think the Civil War Historic Commission would like to maybe bring it to them too and let them chime in. That's all. Thank you.
Alderman Potts.
Thank you, sir. I think this is a great step. I think this aligns with all of our strategic planning meetings that we've recently had as we've talked about the balance of preservation and progress. And I'm excited to see this and excited for it to be done before the end of the year. So good job.
Thank you. Item 17 is ordinance 2024-27, ordinance to amend Title 7, Chapter 5, Section 7-505, parentheses 2 of the Franklin Municipal Code related to the Life Safety Code and determining building occupancy load.
We have representatives from Development Services Group, Fire, and Building Neighborhood Services. Have them address it. So, Vernon, take it away.
Good evening again. I wanted to take this opportunity just to have Jonathan Dyer, Assistant Fire Marshal, and Randy Tosh, our Building Commissioner, just share with you how they've worked together to resolve an inconsistency between the NFPA Fire Code and the International Building Code, and just give an example of the work they do in leading their teams of plan examiners and inspectors that are out in the field working with our tenants. So turn it
Good
over
evening.
to Jonathan and Randall.
The city has adopted two codes that address the same thing, the International Fire Code and Building Code. They're part of the International Code Council series. And we also have the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association 101 code. So the International Building Code has an exception to determine egress width on existing and new construction. So during one of our development meetings, some of the building owners and developers, property managers, were having issues with the occupant load in some of the business office buildings. And we come to the conclusion that a lot of it's changed in the way they figured the occupant load, the maximum occupant load. And the way we've come to the conclusion to address this is to look at our existing adopted codes and see what we can do to stay within the state requirement law of the minimum requirement of the building code and fire code, but also not minimizing life safety. So what we are proposing is to take the exceptions that are in the International Building Code and essentially apply that same logic to the NFPA Life Safety Code, which would allow certain locations to take advantage of the exemption, which is if you have a fire sprinkler system and you have voice evac fire alarm system, then you can reduce the minimum width of the for egress. So that's essentially it. That would allow a higher number of occupants in the space that was looking at than before, because before, up until now, we've been enforcing the life safety code because it's more stringent than the building code and fire code. So with this exception in the fire code, building code, I say them together because they have the same language in both codes when they're addressing the maximum occupant load. But so that ICC, the International Code Council, they address that with an exception, and which reduces that minimum egress width for stairs and exit doors, basically, another exiting component. So that is what this is asking, is to basically apply those same exceptions from the building code to the life safety code, and it would apply to every type of occupancy besides hazardous occupancies, places that store hazardous materials, and I-2 facilities, which is like hospitals and nursing homes. So they would still have to have the wider egress capacity. So that's it in a nutshell. So hopefully I covered everything. Do you have anything to add, Randy?
I think you covered it.
We'll be happy to answer any questions you have, how we came to these determinations, if you need that information.
I'm
Mayor
not
stepped
sure.
away, so feel
I'm
free.
not sure I understand the egress capacity. It says under number 2, the means of egress capacity. Stairway, it said served by such stairways by means of egress capacity factor of 0.2 inches per occupant in the building. So how do you figure that out?
I can explain that.
Yeah.
Anytime we have a space, what we've encountered in recent, in the last couple of years for that matter, but recently it's been even more magnified. During COVID, we had a lot of people move out of office buildings, and so they're trying to bring those back. So many of these office buildings were built maybe 20 years ago, and so we had a different code cycle at that time, and they were built with multiple different offices on each floor rather than like cubicles, so that the code has changed over time to allow cubicles, which is a maximum occupant load, so it's 50 square feet per person. So then it magnifies the number of people that are there. So what the multiplier that you're speaking of does is you multiply the occupant load, let's say if it's 600 by 0.2, there's 120 inches that are required for your stair width. And so we have 2 stairs, it's 60 inches a stair. If you apply the multiplier that the life safety code has, it's 0.3. The exception Jonathan speaks of is the 0.2. They both call out 0.3, but we have an exception in the IBC. So by applying the 0.3, that's 180 inches. So now we're at 7.5 feet for a stairwell when we have 2 stairwells. So what this does is it brings the 2 codes into parity so that we're still meeting the life safety needs of the people with the sprinklers and the voice activated alarm systems. So we're maintaining a safe building, allowing people to get in and to get out. That's really what we're concerned with, is to get out in an emergency. So we're maintaining that. We're not giving up anything. We're just bringing the 2 codes into parity. And that helps our building owners that have been here for quite some time to be able to occupy their buildings. We're seeing more training rooms and, like I said, more maximized space with cubicle areas.
It really gives them more flexibility
Absolutely.
than they have with a more strict interpretation. This exception helps us work with them more for more options for how they use their space, especially as it's getting adapted.
I would see
as
that
people come back into the office more in their different structures.
I saw that
so
as
it's a good thing.
I saw that as limiting it.
It's not. This takes away the limitation. The exception helps us do some math that is a little more friendly to those building owners
Those
as they're
buildings that
looking
are
at
already
how they build out and fill their space. Yeah, this is existing buildings.
Okay.
Alderman Caesar.
Without compromising safety or life.
Exactly. That's right. And that's why this team has worked so well together to solve that problem, working with building owners.
All right.
Are schools in that tier 2?
Yeah.
Or daycares?
The only thing that it doesn't apply to is the I-2, which is nursing homes, hospitals, and also hazardous. It does apply. It would apply to educational as well.
Education, okay. Okay, got it.
Sorry, Brendan.
No, I'm just going to say, this came up at a design professionals meeting with, as Jonathan and Randall has
Okay.
said, with design, building owners and corporate building owners, as well as building managers. So this just helps for the reuse of buildings when they're putting more employees into buildings, even though they're coming and going.
Is the exception, is there no way to, I mean, and you're the life safety professional, I guess both of y'all implement life safety codes in some way or form, but if daycares, and I just wonder is that a concern of yours or not?
Well, I guess the key thing is with that is voice activation, voice evac system for the fire alarm. Usually in daycares, they wouldn't have that voice evac system. Now, if they choose to install that, yes, it would still apply to them. So with, of course, fire sprinklers as well. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item 18 is an ordinance to amend Title II, Chapter 2 of the Franklin Municipal Code to amend Section 2-204 and Section 2-205 relating to membership, officers meeting, and rules and procedure of the Development Services Advisory Commission. It's my understanding this basically removes the restriction for staff on that committee to be able to be reappointed.
Yeah, your city administrator appoints a designee to serve on that, and the broad term limit was applied to that too.
Yeah.
That's largely a staff position. It would it doesn't make sense to turn that staff person over for continuity's sake. At least keep that option alive. So that's what we're correcting here.
19 is a resolution declaring certain consulting firms that responded to a city request for qualification of professional engineering design services for city water distribution, wastewater collection, water reclamation, reclaimed water distribution projects as eligible for award if and as the need to pursue such projects arise during the term of the award. That's pretty standard that we've done.
This is kind of a pre-qualification
Yeah.
for various needs that we have for engineering across water management, and you see the various categories that we identify folks for. So it gives us sort of a roster to pull from when we need help
Yeah.
on projects.
We requested proposals to be very transparent. We graded them. Some of our staff graded them. And we've taken the work that we did, we divided into 4 different categories, and this ranks those consultant proposals based off of their experience in that work. So we'll use this for the next 5 years to choose the consultants that we use to perform that work.
And then item 20 is Amendment 1 to the contract 2020-0128 with West Haven Partners LLC for parkland impact fee and construction agreement for West Haven subdivision.
Good evening. That's just an updated
Yeah.
exhibits. Nothing,
No.
no change in fee.
I'd like to note that this impact fee is creatively, has been creatively developed to be paid over time at certain stages of the
Good.
development. So the city is already doing this.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's good for us to note that we're already doing some of these creative things, and hopefully will in the future.
Okay, we're going to stop right there. We're not going to make it to Board of Mayor and Alderman pay again, and we apologize.
Motion to remove from agenda item.
Stop it.
And,
I think
we'll
it should
put,
be the first thing
sanitation,
on the
environmental
next.
services and another one.
I think we're going to move that to the first. That's all right. I was going to ask for it to be deferred because I want everybody here.
Yeah.